Well, thanks for joining me this afternoon. Today I'm going to be presenting our partner Hotel Puerto Valle, which is a hotel located in northeastern Argentina near the Iberá wetlands. Many of you know who I am already. I'm Nicola. I'm the UK market manager for Senderos. I work closely with Gareth and Simon, and we represent 20 to 25 different lodges all over South America and Costa Rica, most of which are high-end experiential lodges and almost all of which concentrate on responsible travel, sustainable tourism and conservation. So Hotel Puerto Valle is a beautiful 14-room hotel which sits on the shores of the River Paraná and is a short drive away from the Iberá wetlands. I'll talk about the location in just a moment. So yes, I'll be presenting this hotel with a short presentation. There'll be time for a Q&A, and then I'll send you all a follow-up. If you would like any further training on this hotel or any of the partners I have been presenting, then please don't hesitate to send me an email on any of the questions you might have. So regional training, for example, how to arrive, how best to fit a property into an itinerary, or any special requests your client may have for one of our partners. Okay, Hotel Puerto Valle is a refurbished country manor which was built in 1868 and sits in its own 14-hectare park. It has this wonderful old estancia feel to it with lots of comfortable modern touches as well. As I mentioned, it sits on the shores of the very wide Paraná River, but is also only a short drive away from the wetlands of Iberá. So here we are with a bit of location information. So this is the Corrientes province here. Puerto Valle is here. As you can see, really close to Iberá National Park, and it is extremely accessible as well. So it is a short flight from Buenos Aires to Posadas, which is about an hour long, and then it's only a 40-minute drive from there to the hotel, all on normal roads. It's about 350 kilometers from Iguazu and 120 from San Ignacio Jesuit ruins. So it can be combined with a visit to Iguazu. It's something that you can talk to your DMC about in terms of the transfers. But what we sometimes recommend is guests to be transferred, if they are doing that journey, to the San Ignacio Mission ruins, have a guided tour there, and then they can swap drivers and Puerto Valle can organise a transfer from San Ignacio down to Puerto Valle. So that's quite a good way to fit the hotel into an itinerary. So the Iberá National Reserve is one of the largest freshwater reservoirs on the continent, and it's the largest protected area in Argentina. It's also one of their newest national parks. So it's got an area of about 1.3 million hectares and also hosts 4 species declared like National Heritage of Corrientes province. So these include the neotropical otter, the maned wolf, the pampas deer and the marshland deer. It's also home to 2 caiman species of Argentina. This is the yacaré caiman and the broad-snouted caiman, and there's over 350 species of birds. So this is an image of the river where the hotel is located. So it's, as I mentioned, nestled in the northeastern corner of the reserve and become a very convenient gateway to discover its wonders. So it provides private access to the wetlands, and with its proximity to Iguazu Falls, makes a visit to the falls an ideal journey to combine with these wetlands. So the climate in this area is generally pleasant all year round, but it can also get very hot and humid. As you can imagine, we're now up in the tropics of South America. So you've got a lot of climate which is very similar to the climate around Iguazu and southern Brazil as well. So spring is kind of an ideal time, or Argentina's spring, to visit the wetlands in Argentina. So this is in the months of kind of September through to November. The temperatures are kind of mild in spring, and there's kind of less rainfall than if you were to go in the months of between kind of March and May. And that also means that the roads are a bit more accessible as well. The summer months of December and January in Argentina can get very hot and humid. So if you have clients which are combining this area with Patagonia, for example, which really is kind of December to February time. It's something to bear in mind, to advise them that the temperature difference will be very stark. And what's great about Puerto Valle is they do actually have an outdoor swimming pool for that time to keep hydrated and refreshed. So this is the property of Hotel Puerto Valle, an aerial view. As you can see here, the different buildings of the hotel are separated across the property. They're kept quite separate from each other, which kind of gives that feeling of exclusivity. On the right-hand side, you've got the public area, so this includes the reception area, the lounges, the restaurant, the quincho, the pool, and also has the Casco family duplex rooms as well, which I'll talk to you about in a moment. In the middle, you have the 4 traditional Casco rooms, and on the left-hand side there you have the 8 more modern deluxe rooms, which were built obviously after the hotel opened, as a hotel having been converted from an estancia. Behind the buildings here, you'll find their kitchen garden, which is where they grow most of their fruit and vegetables. And behind that still, you've got a lagoon here, and this is where they have their stables. So in the heart of the hotel, in the middle, they have this beautiful original traditional Corrientes manor house, which I mentioned was built in 1868. And this is where the 4 traditional Casco rooms are located. So these are kind of the leading category, if you like, compared to the deluxe rooms. So there are 4 of these in this building, and they share this really beautiful terrace out the front. And this terrace has uninterrupted views across the lawns out to the Paraná River, and from where you can see really beautiful sunsets and sunrises because it faces north, and so you've got them both on the south and the west and the east. So inside, the Casco rooms are incredibly spacious with very high ceilings, this beautiful wooden beamed ceilings, concrete polished floors, adobe walls. All the bathrooms have this beautiful polished concrete walls and really large showers. Each of these beds can be converted as a king-size bed into 2 twin beds. And because of the extra space, they can also fit in an extra bed as well. Each of the rooms are also equipped with their own mate sets. So they have a thermos and a gourd and little minutas for the guests. And then going over to the left-hand side of the property, as we saw in the aerial picture, they have 8 of these deluxe rooms. So these are separated slightly from the rest of the property. Again, they're very spacious, but with much more kind of modern touches. They have these beautiful large outdoor showers, private terraces, and they have much more of a secluded feel to them among the trees. As you can see here, they're very spacious and have these views that go straight out from the bedroom to the river. So they have 4 of these units, which means they have 2 of these large rooms in each of the units. And then in the main building, there is this 2-story apartment that is ideal for a family or perhaps a couple who would like a bit more space. On the ground floor, it has a master room with a king-size bed and a small living room and a large bathroom. And on the first floor, there's a large living room that can accommodate 2 beds and a cradle. And they have a terrace on the ground floor and a balcony on the first floor, both with great views over across the Paraná River. So this is their refreshing outdoor pool. As I mentioned, in the summer it can get very hot. Even in November when I visited, it was extremely hot, and the pool was definitely a refreshing relief. And it's got these beautiful views again out over the river. One thing to mention is that the river is not really swimmable, and it's because there's quite a lot of wildlife in the river, such as caiman and the occasional snake. They also have other beautiful spots to sit and take in the sunset with a beer or glass of wine. So this is their Palapa garden house. And they also have a quincho, which is typical of any estancia building really in Argentina or Chile, an area specifically designed for traditional barbecues. And they bring guests together as often as possible to come together for these traditional barbecues, where they will have cooked some lamb or some beef over hot fire for most of the afternoon. And it's one way for the guests to experience something quite traditional and quite local. So they have these other communal areas such as the reception and lounge area and a library as well, where they have a lot of books, particularly on the bird life of the area, as well as all the different wildlife you can see on the different excursions. One thing about Puerto Valle is that they have this incredible cuisine, which really reflects the simplicity and character of the place. They have a lot of local ingredients like river fish, tropical and citrus fruits. And these different ingredients have been part of the local recipe since the lands were inhabited by the indigenous tribes of the area, or only inhabited by the indigenous tribes of the area. And they cook these using lots of contemporary techniques. And so the menu offers like a huge range of aromas and flavors, which are perfectly matched with some of the excellent fine wines you find in Argentina, particularly kind of the crisp white wines you'll find in the northern part of Argentina. And being so close to Brazil as well, you've got a lot of Brazilian influences here. So a lot of the handmade snacks that you'll find on the different excursions will quite often be reminiscent of a lot of the ingredients you find in Brazil. There are many different settings for food at Puerto Valle. You can have your lunch or breakfast out on the lawn. They have a couple of piers where out onto the river where guests can take some food. And as I'll mention in a moment, out on excursions, they'll have their own floating decks as well. So a lot of their vegetables come from their own kitchen garden, which I mentioned. And it has a lot of their own Brazilian influence. And guests can be taken on a tour of this kitchen garden and then also shown some different cooking techniques from the region as well. So I did mention as well that each of the guests are provided with their own mate kits. So mate, if you don't know, is a traditional Argentinian tea, which is taken in this gourd and topped up with hot water from the thermos. This area of Argentina, Corrientes, is well known for the herb, the yerba mate, to be grown. And so it's important that the hotel would like to teach guests about the tradition of drinking mate and provide each guest with their own gourd that they can take away with them. They also put on afternoon tea time with homemade pastries that take a key role on the table, with other local goodies such as chipa, which is very similar to the Brazilian pie de queijo. So on to the activities. So the hotel provides all-inclusive packages, which we would recommend people take on a 2-night basis or 3-night basis. That way they have enough time for a bit of R&R and also enough time to fit in each of the excursions. So the excursions are taken on a half-day basis. There's not really any major full-day excursions, and they're taken with other guests from the hotel. The hotel do also offer a bed and breakfast service as well. And so when guests are there on a bed and breakfast basis, they can book any of the excursions they want to whilst they're there and pay locally. So the excursion which all guests are recommended to take whilst they stay at Puerto Valle is a trip out on Laguna Valle. So this is the Valle Lagoon, which is located on their property in the northern area of the wetlands. This excursion takes in a lot of the wildlife and bird life and is taken in the afternoon and going into dusk. They're taken out in these small motorized boats with the guide and spend most of the afternoon spotting birds, caiman, deer, and other animals from the boat. So the wetlands are home to hundreds of species of mammals and birds. It's one of the largest freshwater reservoirs in South America. And the land which belongs to the estancia reaches into the wetlands and up to the wharf where a boat awaits to take the visitors along this 2-kilometer narrow channel which connects the land with the lagoon. And so on arrival, visitors will notice lots of groups of capybara on the shores just when they're getting into the boat, which by the time they come back to the shore, they start frolicking in the water as the sun is going down behind them. So out on the excursion, guests are very likely to spot many caiman, likely in families, and also resting on the banks just above the water levels. As I mentioned, there'll be lots of capybara around and their families as well. And one of the highlights of the trips is seeing this spectacular sunset over the marshes and wetlands and being able to witness it from one of their floating platforms or a viewing platform where you can see for miles across the marshes. And here guests will also be presented with a cold beer and some homemade traditional snacks as well. Another excursion which guests can take during their stay at Hotel Puerto Valle is taking a trip out to the Cambriata portal. This is a relatively new excursion which takes guests further into the Iberá wetlands, which is also organised as a photo safari because they're likely to see a lot of deer, caiman and capybara and birds on this excursion as well. So they go out in their 4x4 vehicles to all the central wetlands, and the guests continue there with walks along the roads to discover the typical wildlife and plant life of the Iberá wetlands, again including birds, capybara, marsh deer, caiman, fox and armadillo. So this is really kind of designed for photo and nature lovers to be able to capture the introduction of the red macaw as well, as it's the only place in the park where it can be seen. This is an example actually of a pampa deer. You're likely to see lots of spoonbill birds and large herons. And this is where, as I mentioned just now, guests should be able to spot the red macaws. So these were very recently reintroduced to the area and are absolutely thriving. And this is thanks to some of the conservation projects which have been established in the region since it was officially made a national park. Other conservation efforts in the area have been working towards reintroducing jaguars as well as the maned wolf, but they are in slightly different areas of the national park. Other activities from the estancia include the opportunity to navigate the channels of the Paraná River by boat or kayak. These channels are home to more than 50 different tree species and are a great opportunity for spotting birds and howler monkeys. So the guides will take guests out on their small, comfortable boats, turning the engine off in the channels to see what they can spot in the trees, and again stopping for refreshments at one of their floating platforms. And these floating platforms can also double up as hides, really, for spotting the wildlife. Guests are supplied with binoculars from the hotels. They're also supplied with mosquito repellent and hats if clients don't have them with them, because there's a fair amount of mosquitoes generally in this area as well. So as previously mentioned, there are over 350 species of birds in the area, and BirdLife International has named Puerto Valle as an important bird area in IBA. And so the hotel recognised this as being quite important and that it would attract a lot of bird watchers to the area. And so they do have these dedicated bird watching programs which are available on request, and they will be able to book in specialised ornithologists for guests to take out early morning bird watching and dusk bird watching tours. They also have short walks through the forests on their property, which take guests past lagoons and through these incredible kind of mangrove trees. Where, as I mentioned, you can spot lots of howler monkeys and amphibians as well. And they also have their own stables on the property where guests can go on a really gentle ride from an hour to 3 hours around the grounds. The longer routes take in the different forests and plantations they have around the property. And they also go along the shores of the river and maybe into the river. And naturally, they'll always stop for a picnic along the way as well. And then there are some shorter alternative tours that can be included in any stay. So as I mentioned, the kitchen garden tour, where you'll have an education on the different ingredients the hotel uses in their cooking, many of which will be endemic to the region. They've got a monkey trail, which goes through the forest that can be accessible from the hotel itself. And also guests can be taken to their tree nursery, where they have started replanting and cultivating trees and flowers which are native to the region to help conserve the natural ecosystem. And then in terms of optional extra activities, they have these 4 kind of more specialised activities which guests can pay extra for. We've had a couple of inquiries in the past about fishing in this area. The waters of the Paraná River can offer 2 different fishing opportunities. So you have fly fishing at Iberá, which is about 100 kilometers from Puerto Valle. Here, guests are accompanied by a specialized guide to fish for dorado, surubí, boga, and amado species. And then there are more traditional fishing opportunities about 25 kilometers from the hotel, and here guests can go on individual or group excursions. Again, fishing with similar species, for similar species as well. One thing to bear in mind is that sport fishing in this area is prohibited in November and December. Guests can also take a tour to a yerba mate plantation. So the largest producer of yerba mate in Argentina is actually located 1 hour from Puerto Valle. Here, guests will be shown the full production of the yerba mate process, including a tasting, as well as a visit to the actual tree nursery and the plantations on the property, always guided by an expert from the estate. If guests are interested in seeing the dams in the area, then the Yacyretá Dam is a hydroelectric plant and Argentina's largest dam, a joint project with the neighbouring country of Paraguay. It's located only 25 kilometres from the hotel, and there are guided tours of the dam, including a visit to the floodgate, a vantage point, and also the machine room. And then for those more interested in the history and cultural history of the region, the Jesuit missions, which were declared a cultural heritage site of humanity by UNESCO, is located in San Ignacio, Misiones, 120 kilometers from Puerto Valle. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, guests can take a tour there if they're going from Puerto Valle to Iguazu or vice versa, and it's a good spot to swap the transfers. There's a small museum there, and there are also guides to take you on tours of the ruins. These are some of the only Jesuit ruins in Argentina, whereas you'll find more of them over the river in Paraguay. Right, so these are the key selling points for Hotel Puerto Valle, which I have covered most of all of these in this presentation. This is something that I can send you as reference if you are talking to clients. I think one of the main key selling points or unique selling points for Puerto Valle is that it is this really beautifully comfortable lodge with air conditioning, with this lovely pool, with incredible cuisine, really close to the Iberá wetlands and very accessible. The Iberá wetlands are a place where still not that many people visit, and people are kind of reluctant to go, maybe because of the accessibility. But Puerto Valle does offer that opportunity to be only 40 minutes from Posadas airport and to be taken to the Iberá wetlands on any half-day or full-day excursion. This is the entrance to the hotel, by the way, which is a really beautiful way to kind of go through this archway of bamboo and arrive at the estancia. So as I will have mentioned in other presentations, we have all of the high-res images and product information, including their fact sheets, their excursion sheet, their rates, and the images, as I mentioned, in our resources center, which is Squirrelfish. This is the username and password. And then here is a list of the different partners we're currently representing. Again, we have links to our website, to Hotel Puerto Valle website, and to Squirrelfish for the images and resources.